Welcome to another video tutorial. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to create readable books. So these might be lore books. So if you want sort of history for your game, the game world that you're setting your game in, you could have books that the player can read that sort of enrich the narrative of the game or fill in a bit of backstory. This video will use a variety of things we've gone over in the past in this series. So we're gonna cover the topic of JSON files for storing the books and retrieving the data from the books, and obviously we'll go into the code that pulls it all together. We'll also talk about how to script the page turning buttons so that they're dynamic, so that they only turn the page as many pages as there are, if you know what I mean. So it will always know how big a book is. So you'll only get page turning buttons when there's more pages to turn, that sort of thing. Okay. So we're going to go through quite a variety of things in this video. We're going to create quite a sort of sophisticated book system. So what I've done ahead of time is gone to ChatGPT, and I've just asked it to generate just some random. I gave it, give me a fictional history of a thieves guild, give me a fictional history of a fictional town. So we'll make these the two books. So one will be a history of the thieves guild and one will be the history of this town, Eldrith. So this will be the content of the books, okay? So the first thing I suggest you do is load up a notepad or something and write your narrative. So your books. So what I'm going to do is grab the text of my first book and I'm going to copy it. And then what you want to do is you want to navigate to the project folder for your project that you're going to put these books into. So I've created an RPG in a Box project called Lore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the map just because it's the easiest thing I've got available to me here. And I'm going to open file location. So once this has popped up, you're going to go back up one into your main folder. You're going to make a new folder and you're going to call it data. Okay. And we'll go into there and we're going to create a new text file and we're going to call this books.json. Okay. And we're going to delete the .txt. So make sure it's a .json file, not a .json.txt, because then it will actually be a text file rather than a JSON file. Okay. And then we're going to open this with Notepad. So here we are inside our books.json file, which is currently empty. So if you need a refresher on JSON files, to create an array in a JSON file, it's 2 square brackets like so, and to create a codex, it's 2 squiggly curly brackets. Okay, so square brackets for an array, curly brackets for a codex. Okay, what we're going to create inside this JSON file is a codex. So we're going to start by creating 2 open and close curly braces, curly brackets like that. And then put the cursor in between and press enter twice so that we have a gap in between the 2 curly braces. Then press tab. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our first key. And that's going to be in speech marks. So open and close speech marks. And I'm going to type book _ thieves guild. Like that. Okay. In fact, just to abbreviate it, I'm going to type book T guild. Okay, this is just the ID of our book, so you can call it anything you want. And then I'm going to put a colon, and then I'm going to open and close square brackets, because what's going to be inside this entry of this codex is an array. So we're basically putting an array inside a codex. So this is our main codex, and we're putting an array inside it. Okay, so our book is essentially going to be an array. So within the curly brackets, I'm going to press enter a couple of times. And then I'm going to go up to the first curly bracket, not curly bracket, the first square bracket here. And I'm going to paste the text that I copied from the notepad where I was writing my book. Now, what you're going to need to do is put speech marks around your text, because obviously RPG in a box isn't, the JSON file needs this to be a string, not just text. So I'm going to put speech mark just to the left of this body of text, and then a speech mark just to the end of that body of text. So this is entry 1 in the array. So this paragraph here is going to be entry 1 in the array. So I'm going to put a comma there. Okay. Then I'm going to put speech marks here and speech marks there, and then another comma. And then I'm going to put speech marks there, speech marks there, comma, and then we got one more to do. So speech marks there, speech mark there. And we're not going to put a comma this time because that's the last entry in the array. And then we'll just bring this up. And what I'm actually going to do is put this at the end of that line, like that. Okay. So we got our opening of the array and then closing of the array just after the last paragraph. Okay. That's that. So we've just ended that array. And we do need a comma, sorry. So we're going to put a comma at the end of, not the end of this paragraph, but at the end of this comma. At the end of this bracket, okay? Because we've just ended that array, but we've got another array to put into this codex. And this is going to be book. Let's just call it Eldrith. Okay? Colon. And then this is another array. So at the end of here, we'll just grab some. In fact, let's see how many lines it is. In fact, do it from here. It's three paragraphs, so I'll just do that ahead of time. So 1, 2, 3. So we'll grab the first paragraph. So at the moment, this is just putting the pages of your book into a JSON file. Oops. But this will be extremely beneficial because once this is done, your game will be able to pull all this data into the game. So one more paragraph. And if you're following along with this, you can just have ChatGPT generate you some random paragraphs. So let's just check this. So that's a string, and then that leads to a new. We need to put a new line, obviously. Every time there's a break. So a new line there. And then not one there. But we bring this up to close out the array. And because that's the last array in this codex, we don't need to put a comma. And we don't need to put a comma at the end of the last curly bracket because we're not having any other codexes inside. So let's close that now and go back to RPG in a box. So we need to put all this together now. So the next step is let's create the user interface for reading these things. So we're going to create a widget, which we'll call book. And you can design this however you want. You know, you can have an image in the background that makes it look like a book and things like that. I'm just going to literally use the RPG in a box interface. I'm just going to make this a bit taller, a bit wider. Something like that. And I'm not going to use the title bar. I'm going to just do that. and I'm going to have 2 text fields, one here and another one underneath, which is going to be the main body of text. Something like that. And then we'll have 2 buttons down here, and we'll put one in the top right. This one is going to be a close button. This one is going to be a previous page button, and this one is going to be a next page button. Okay, these are going to be read only, so you can't edit them, and there's going to be no text by default inside these boxes. So there's our book widget. Okay, so with that set up, now the next step is our items. So let's create an item called Thieves Guild. And then I'll just put a description, a brief history. And then I've already got an image for it, which is going to be the blue book. This is going to be a usable item, so turn on the usable button. We want 0, so you've got unlimited use. You can keep reading it as many times as you want. And now we need to make the script, but we'll come back to that. Let's make the next item. So one more item. This is going to be Baldurs, a brief history, red book, usable, unlimited use, save. Okay, so we are finally ready to start putting our script into place. Now, the first thing I want to do is on our map, I'm going to select the bookcase, and I'm just going to put an interacts quick script on the bookcase where I'm going to give myself the 2 books. So that will now give us the books, but obviously we then need to actually make the books do something. So let's start with the first book. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a script, a new script, and we'll call this read underscore guild, let's say. And this is going to be us reading the guild book. Okay. Click OK. This will lead us to this script. Click edit, and I'll explain what the code is doing. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a check for something. I'm going to type if global.property. This property doesn't exist yet. We haven't created it, but we don't need to create it because this script will also create it anyway. But the first thing we need to check is, does it exist? So if global property book is null, then what I want to do is set a separate global property, which I'm going to call page number. I want that to equal 0. End. No, else, sorry, because there's more to come yet. So what we're basically saying is if the global property book doesn't exist, then set the page number to 0. So, there is no page number. You're not reading anything. There's no book. So reset the page number. Okay. If there is a book in that global property, then the next thing we want to check is if global property book entry 0. Now, let me talk about this. What is going to be inside global property book in a minute is going to be one of those books, i.e. either the Thieves Guild or the History of Eldrift, the town one, right? And they're both arrays. Both the books are arrays. So what I'm checking here is if inside the global property book, if the first entry paragraph, that's what's going to be 0. 0 is essentially this paragraph here, if it's this book, or it's this paragraph here, if it's this book. Does that make sense? So I'm just checking this paragraph here. So I'm checking if inside the global property, that paragraph, if it's equal to data books.json. Is that what I called it? Yep. Books.json. And then we need the codex, which is book T guild. We need the value for that. And then entry 0. So what I'm doing is I'm checking if the global properties first paragraph is the same as the first paragraph that's beside this key in this file. If that's the case, then that means we're currently reading this book, not this book. Okay? So what I actually want to check, is if it's not that paragraph. So if we're reading a different book to this book, then I also want to set a global property page number to 0. So what this will basically do is whenever you start reading a different book, it's going to lose the bookmark. Okay? Now, you could come up with another system where, you can store bookmarks remotely and you can have multiple books on the go and things like that. But just to keep it simple, while you're reading a book, it will save your place. But when you start reading a different book, it's going to start you again and store that book and all of that. Okay? So it will store where you're reading as long as you keep reading the same book. Okay? For now, keeping it simple. So then what we need to do is actually create this global property book. So global.property book is going to be an array. So it's going to equal, and then we're going to bring in data books.json, and then we need to bring in the relevant book. So again, this is book underscore T guild, and that's all we need to do. We don't need to worry about any of the array numbers. We're bringing in the whole array that's tied to this name. So it's going to bring in all of this book, basically, and it's going to store it inside this property. Okay? So global property book now essentially equals the entirety of this particular book here. Next thing we want to do is just create a quick local variable called book size. And what we're going to do is we're going to set that to equal global property book dot size -1. What size does is it counts how many things are in an array. So in this case, it's going to count how many paragraphs there are. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So it's going to come back as 4. Okay. Book size would then be equal to 4. But the thing you've got to remember is that arrays don't count from 1 to 4. They start from 0. So it'd actually be 0, 1, 2, 3, which is why we minus the 1. So we take the 4 that we end up with, minus the 1. That gives us the maximum number from an array point of view. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's that. Next comes the text. So we're going to refer to our widget. It was a while ago since I did that. What did I call it? Book. So what's this number? 1. Back to our script. So widget book dot element 1. So that's the that's this bar here. Dot text equals, and I'm just going to hard code this, but you could also store that in the codex somewhere if you wanted to. This is just the title of this book. Okay. Then we need to put in the text of the book. So widget book dot element 0002 dot text. That's going to be the main body of text. That's going to equal global.property book. And then remember, book is an array, so we're going to open and close the array. But rather than type in something specific like 0 or 1 or 2 or anything like that, we're going to pass in global.property page number. Now that should start at 0, because if you're starting a new book, so it's going to bring in the first paragraph of that book. Okay. So then what we do is we check if global.property page number is equal to 0. So if you're on the first page, then widget book dot element, and I need the element number for this button here, 3 dot visible equals false. Else if global dot property page number is equal to book size, that would then mean you're on the last page or the last paragraph of the book, in which case we'll copy this and this is where we're going to make this button visible false. And with that done, end, the last thing we need to do is show widget book. Click apply and save. And there you go. So that's our first script. So just to quickly go over it, we're basically, first of all, checking if the book array is null, then set the page number to 0. Otherwise, if it's not empty, then is it a different book to the one for this script, in which case, again, reset the page number to 0. Once you've done all of that, store inside the book property the right book. See how big the book is, how many paragraphs is the book. Then set the title text to the title of the book. Set the body of text to the first page of that book. Oh, sorry. Don't set the body of text to the first page of that book. Set the body of text to the paragraph that you're on. Okay. Now, when you first open a book, that will be the first paragraph. But if you flip through the book and then close it and come back, it will be where you left off. Okay. Then just to check for which buttons should be available. So if you've just started a book, then you can't go, if you're just, on the first page, you can't go back anymore. And if you're on the last page, you can't go forward anymore. Okay. And then at the end of that, show the widget. That makes sense? So let's take a moment just to pause and test this out. So to test this out, we're going to go to the Thieves Guild book item and make sure we assign the script read guild to that book and click save. Now, don't worry about these buttons just yet. We'll come back to those. I just want to check the JSON file, make sure that there's no errors before we go much further. So let's test this out. So here we are in game, got nothing in my inventory, but if I go and use the bookshelf, I've now got both the Thieves Guild and Eldritch book. So, moment of truth with our JSON file. If we right click this book, great, no errors. You can see straight away, first of all, there's our title, but we hard coded that. So that's, that's not surprising that that's worked. But in the main body of text is the first paragraph of our book. Notice that the previous button doesn't exist because we're on the first page of the book. We haven't programmed the buttons yet, so I can't close the widget and I can't go next and I can't go, all of that. We'll do that. I just wanted to make sure before we go any further, it's bringing in the data properly and putting it in the widget. Okay, so if you're at that stage as well, we can move on to the next stage. So the first thing we'll do before we move on to the buttons is let's just do the other book, because it's basically just going to be a variation of the first script. So go back to the script editor. What we'll do is we'll apply and save that. We will click this Save As button, and we'll call this read_Eldrith. So this is going to be the one that's the history of the town. And we'll click OK. And then we just need to make amends to this particular code for the other book. So if there's nothing in the book, reset the page number. That's fine. If the book, however, contains does not contain book Eldrith, so if it's not this current book we're working on now, then reset the page number. Then we need to put book Eldrith into the property, count how many paragraphs are in, or how many entries are in this book. This will be Eldrith, a brief history, and then this will be this code's the same. We're just going to put in the main body of text, we're going to put the book and the page number that we're on. And then if we're on the first page, don't show the previous button. If we're on the last page, don't show the forward button, and then show the book. So apply and save that, and then we'll go to our second book, the Eldrith book, and we'll put read Eldrith onto that. So let's again just quickly check that's working too. So now we've got read Eldrith, and there we go. Now we've got the other book. Okay, so now let's get to our two buttons. So I'm actually going to put these all into one script. I'm going to be super efficient. Let's put them all into one script. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the new script button, and we're going to call this book buttons. Okay. And we're going to click edit. So the first thing we're going to do is regrab. Now, one thing we also do need to do first of all is go to game configuration, go to global properties, and we're going to add a number global property called page_number. We want to have that in existence so that we can use it in our code. So $book size is going to equal global.property book dot size -1 again. So we're getting the current, whatever the current book is, get its size, store it back into this local variable. You could make this a global property and then you wouldn't need to do this twice, but because it's a local variable, we're doing it again in this script. But it's up to you. I'm not using it in any other script, so it makes sense to just keep it as a local variable for this case. So then we're going to check the text on the button. So self is going to be the button we've just clicked on. So if self.text is equal to, in this case, what am I doing first? I'm doing the forward first. I may as well copy my notes. So if the text is the forward button, so if the text on the button you've clicked matches the forward arrows, then it means you've clicked the forward button. So what happens if you click the forward button? So if you click the forward button, we then want to check if global.property page number is less than book size. So in other words, if you've still got pages to go, then what we want to do is we want to increment page number. So global property page number plus equals 1. So it goes up by 1. We go to the next page. And then we update the widget main body of text. So widget book dot element 0002, which is the main block of text, dot text equals global property book, and then we can use global property page number, because now it's gone on by 1. Now the page number has been increased by 1. It will grab the next paragraph in the book and put it into text. Then we want to show the previous button, which I believe is free, because if you've gone forward, then you should obviously be able to go back. If global dot property page number is equal to book size, then we want to hide the next button. So the moment we reach the maximum page, i.e. the maximum paragraph, we want to automatically immediately hide the next button, the one we've just clicked on. So you could actually hide potentially self, but we'll do it via this way. Element dot visible equals false. Okay, end. That's just a little if that just checks, when we clicked next, did we reach the maximum paragraph? And that's it. So that's that. That's that instance. So that's dealt with the previous. That's dealt with next. Sorry. So then we've got else if self.text is equal to previous. And it's going to be the majority of this is the same. So I might just copy all of this for a moment and change that which I don't need. So if global property page number in this case is greater than 0, because we're going backward now. So while it's greater than 0, we want to decrease the page number. And we then want to set the text to the page that we're now on as a result of going back one. We want to set the visibility of the maximum, the next button to true, because if we've gone back, then we should be able to go forward. And then if the global property page number is equal to 0 in this case, so if we're on the very first page, then we should hide the previous button, the back button, because we've reached the very back of the book. Okay? And then that is the end of that. So it's just a few minor adjustments to that one, and that will end that if. And then lastly, else if self.text is equal to that, although we don't need to do that because we can just do else. And we'll just do hide widget book. Okay, and that is our buttons code, and that caters for all 3 buttons on our widget. So that one, and that one. Okay, and that's pretty much our book code done. Okay, so let's just save this quickly, make sure it's valid. Oh no, we got an issue here. Oh, I spelled widget wrong. So there we go. So just to quickly go over this, I'm just checking. First of all, grabbing the current book size of the book we're reading, whatever it is. And then if the button we've clicked on is the advanced button, then if we are, while we are less than, on a page number that's less than the book size, then allow us to go on to the next page and show that page and set the fact that we could go back one because we've just gone on one. And if we've then reached the maximum by clicking that, then hide the forward button. Otherwise, if we've clicked the previous button, then while we're greater than 0, in other words, while we're some way through the book, allow us to go backwards, show the current page number that we're then on. Because we've gone backwards, show the forwards button. And if we've now turned back to the very back of the book, i.e. the very first page, then hide the ability to go back anymore. And then if we've clicked the close button, hide the widget. Okay, that is our code. And we're just going to put this code onto all 3 buttons. So this is going to be run script book buttons, run script book buttons, run script book buttons. Save, and that's it. Let's give it a test. So if we go to the bookshelf and use the book. So if we read the Thieves Guild first, we right click that. There's our first page. We should now be able to click this, go to the next page. Paragraph updates. We've got our next button. Our previous button. I think this has got 4 paragraphs, so we can go 2 more. 1, 2. We've reached the end of the book. The next button is no longer there because we've now hit the last page of the book. We can go back through the book to the first page. So we can now effectively read our book. Okay? And at any point we want, we could stop, let's say, on page 3, shall we say? So this is page 1, page 2, page 3. So page 3 starts with the paragraph to maintain a facade of legitimacy. We can close the book. If we open it again, it remembers where we were to maintain a facade of legitimacy. So whenever you close a book, as long as you read the same book, it will show you the last page you opened. If you don't want that functionality, then you can make it so that when you close the widget, you clear away that page number global property, okay? But for now, I quite like it remembering the page we're on. Now, if we read the other book, that will clear the page number, so we're back on page 1 of this book. So if we were to close this and read the first book, again, we're on page 1 of the first book. So the moment you start reading another book, it will reset your progress. So you'll only have one save state, okay? So if you start reading another, it's like basically if you imagine you had a single bookmark, okay? And in order to read another book, you have to take the bookmark out of the book you were currently reading. So you lose your place in the book you were currently reading. As I say, you could make this more advanced over time and store separate page numbers for different books. Absolutely, you could do that. But for now, just to show, just a simple book mechanic. And you can see it's dynamic. This book only has 3 pages, and sure enough, it knows that it's not having an extra button for a missing page or something. There's we can go forwards 1, 2, 3 times like that. But if we read the other book, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I must have made them the same length. We could have had. Hang on a minute. They can't be the same length. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 pages, and this is. Oh, is it a bit of a bug there? My somehow my page buttons have disappeared. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 pages, and I'm just gonna, for safety reasons, I'm just gonna save it somewhere in the middle, and then this is 1, 2, 3 pages. Yeah, so you can see they're different. The books are different lengths, but the buttons do hide and show based on the book length rather than some fixed value. Okay, so it is reading in the text of the book and using that as the buttons. Yeah. I think what might be the issue, let me test this. If I stop there and then read the other book, yes. So I'd have to look into this a bit more, but if I could tell you what I think the bug is or what the issue is, I think it's because this book, because this particular book is longer, it's got more pages in it than this book. I think that's where the buttons then disappeared, because this book is shorter, possibly. Again, you can make the code more, you can go through the code and make sure that the buttons get shown. Let me just have a quick look at the code quickly. So when you read a particular book, what you could do, for example, is you could basically say that, you know, if you're opening a new book, you could also set the widget button, the next button, to always be visible. Yeah, because if you're setting the page number to 0, you could also here set widget book element 4 to be visible, to be true. Yeah, that would fix that issue, because then every time you start a new book, irrespective of how many pages it's got or everything, it will always assume you're on page 1, so therefore it will have a next button all the time. So you could do that. In fact, why not? I may as well make that patch right now. Seems like a good idea. And you'd need to do that for the other book as well. So let me just quickly do that. I may as well do that here as well. Everywhere you're starting a new book or a new instance of the book, make sure the next button is visible. Anyway, so I hope that's sort of given you a sort of idea of how you can go about making dynamic books in RPG in a Box. So it's a really good idea to use JSON files, because as I've done here, I've put all my books into one JSON file. So I've got separated by the values. So book T Guild, book Eldrith, and then each book is an array consisting of the paragraphs of the book. And then if you wanted another book, you would put a comma here, and then you'd have your next book code. So book, new book, or whatever. You'd have your colon, you'd open and close an array, and then in there you'd put your paragraphs of your third book. Okay. And then when you want to use that book, when you bring it into the global property in RPG in a Box, when you have your read that particular book code, you bring it in like this: global property book equals data books JSON, and then the code for that book. So this would be book underscore new book, to bring in that one we just quickly made and then deleted a second ago. Okay. And that will bring in the whole of that book, storing it in this global property. And then this page number will increment through the amount of pages in that book. And every time you turn the page, it will always automatically show you the next page for as long as that particular book is, because that's what this does. This makes sure you always know how long that particular book is. And then the previous buttons will do the opposite. They'll go backwards through the page numbers until you get to 0, etc. So between 0 and between the size of the book, you can go forwards and back, forwards and back. And you just store all your book text outside of RPG in a Box, so it's not taking up memory in the game's code. You don't have to create, thousands of widgets for every book. You just have one widget that just reads in all the book data from a JSON file. Okay? So hopefully that's made sense. If you have any questions about this, then obviously do feel free to, ask on the Discord. I'll be happy to go over anything that's, I appreciate it's been quite a bit to go over in one video, but hopefully just by breaking it down and going through it step by step, it's been easy enough to follow. So with that said, that'll wrap up this video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you got some good information out of this, and I hope it was helpful, giving you some ideas of how you could approach books and things. So with that said, that'll wrap up this video. Stay tuned for more tutorials.